You're listening to Parenting Our Future. I'm parenting expert Robbin McManne, author of The Yelling Cure and founder of Parenting for Connection. My podcast is all about providing you with the tools and solutions you need in all different areas of your parenting so you can create strong connections with your kids, get all the cooperation you want, and live a life that is full of joy and connection. And by the way, the tools and solutions that you're looking for in your parenting don't just live in each episode of my show, they're also in my free membership site, The Parent Toolbox, where you can access tools created by myself and my brilliant guests that cover everything from helping your kids to sleep, managing meltdowns, reducing overwhelm, to getting your kids to listen the first time, and so much more. Join the Parent Toolbox so you can download and use the tools that are ready on the site, and each week, a brand new tool is added. And of course, the best part is it's absolutely free to join and to stay in. You can go to www.parent-toolbox.com today. Now let's dive into this next episode of Parenting Our Future. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Parenting Our Future. I am Robbin McManne. We are going to help you wire your mind for positivity. Okay, so settle in. Let's get comfortable, grab a cup of tea. I want you to listen deeply because my guest is going to change your life.
All right.
Right?
Not
okay. The beautiful voice that you're hearing is Alana Ezderman. Now, get this. She is a positive psychology practitioner and coach. She empowers teams and individuals to expand their strengths, reawaken creativity, boost resiliency, create deeper connections, and find purpose and meaning. Now, she has a passion for positive neuroscience. So everything she's talking about is based in science, right? Research and science. And she really began this journey after she received a high blood pressure diagnosis at 40. And she's going to talk more sort of about what brought her to that place. And so she has had this journey to lower her own blood pressure using her mind rather than medication. And now she's sharing these techniques that she's mastered to teach others to rewire their minds for positivity, maximize their time spent in the present moment, and bounce back from adversity in real time. Okay, that all sounds delicious and wonderful. Tell me how to do it. Alana, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell us all how to do this in 40 minutes or less?
Absolutely. Done. Thank you for that beautiful intro. That was just wonderful. And yes, I did receive a high blood pressure diagnosis at 40. So that was almost 4 years ago. And I still can't even believe it. I know when we were prepping, I was saying, kind of what led me there was I had chose a career based really on money,
Yeah.
which a lot of us really do and lead with, and it certainly is important. And I had acquired all the things that everyone said would make me really happy if I got them. Everything from like the fancy cars and the house and the vacations and the golden doodle and the like. And really, I was successful at my job when I was not home, traveling globally, taking folks out to really fancy dinners, probably having too much wine. And I went to my doctor at the time and he said, you've got high blood pressure. And I was like, what? I was like, no way. I did not believe him. Yeah. And I was fit and thin and I just couldn't believe it. And he's like, you need to slow down. And you're burnt out. And I was like, no, I'm not. Like I did not, like I argued with him. Like I didn't realize that, you're not supposed to feel a little stressed all the time. Like that's not normal.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Well, I don't know that people know that though, right? Because
right.
all
That's
stressed
the point.
all the time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So he was like, you're gonna go on medication and I need you to slow down. And I was like, yeah, I'll slow down when I'm retired. And he's like, you may not have that time. And I was like, what? Like I was so shocked because here I am, I'm really working really hard for that time.
Yeah.
I'm working really hard and I'm hoping I'm gonna slow down during like the golden years, which actually might be cut short. So I was like, all right, I realize this is serious. And I didn't want to go on medication though. I was like, I'm gonna figure this out by myself. And that's how I found positive psychology.
Wow. And so just for, color, you were in sales and marketing, right? So you were not at all into the into psychology at all. And
Not at
so
all. No,
yeah.
cybersecurity, ad tech space, hedge fund space,
Oh my goodness.
kind of, yeah, flourishing industries with lots of money and, lots of different ways to entertain people who are used to
Mhm.
being entertained. Like, how much more fun could we have, kind of thing,
Right. Yeah.
on an ongoing basis. Yeah, which sounds amazing, and then after a while, it really took a toll. And it's crazy because I literally I went for this certification, and week one I learned the most important thing, and this is the thing that I feel like every single person needs to know. It was so empowering. So whenever you're thinking about the future, when am I going to take my kids, to soccer? What am I going to make for dinner? What about my meeting next week? What about, our trip week after next? Future planning rumination equals anxiety. And then,
Okay.
this is like a big, like, oh, it's like rooted in something. Okay. There are thought patterns around anxiety. And then,
Uh-huh.
we want to have ourselves like a perfect future. We envision everything going really well. Like all those things I just told you are going to be great, right? And then
Mhm.
no, because we're human, so we cannot be perfect. So we're going to be messing things up, So that happens, and then we hate on ourselves, like, oh, I messed up the presentation, or what this person say about me, and this past judgment rumination is depression.
So future planning rumination is anxiety. Past
Yeah,
planning, past, no, not planning,
judgment.
past
Yeah,
judgment. Oh, yeah. Ooh,
rumination. Yeah, and then you're like, oh,
okay.
that kind of makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah. Forward thinking anxiety, thinking about the past, just to like really like, because I need to break it down for my own self,
Right.
is depression.
Yeah,
And
it's judgment, because you're judging yourself on something that you can't even fix because that's over.
yeah. And because you predicted it to be a certain way, which was not based in any reality
Right.
whatsoever, you now are beating yourself up for the way it used to be. Hello, parents everywhere that are
Right.
doing this on a regular basis.
All the time.
And you know what I always think too, and tell me what you think about this. I always think of anxiety as being at war with what is happening in this present moment. Like, this is
Mhm.
not what I want. This is
Right.
not, I don't feel comfortable. I'm not
Right.
accepting of this moment.
Right.
Therefore, I'm anxious. Is that accurate to
Yes.
you?
Yes. The moment we move away from accepting what it is that, it is in
Is.
front of us, and wholeheartedly embracing that,
Yeah.
even if it's not something that we want. And I love Brene Brown because she has a really awesome quote called "Embracing the suck." Because
Ah,
sometimes things just suck.
embracing
And
the
the
suck.
best thing you could do is embrace it. But you will notice immediately when you're starting to have a thought that doesn't serve you, like the one that you just talked about, because you'll feel it in your body. Like, it feels uncomfortable. Like, all of a sudden you feel woozy. Like maybe your stomach hurts a little bit, or your head starts to hurt a little bit. And what's happening there, and this is where it's really key. Your body is a messenger for heavy emotion, right? Because that thought pattern of you not liking what's happening right now is now generating an emotion, right? So maybe that's emotion, anything from this isn't fit, like unfairness, or feeling left out, or like, how is it that, I made that mistake, and I feel shame. These kinds of emotions will be communicated to us through the body, but we all just ignore it. So, like, I ignored it. I remember I would get, like, it would be hard for me to get a breath in, and
Mm.
then I ignored that, and then it turned into like a dull chest pain, and I ignored that, and it's sad to say because I have kids, and I was like, no, I'm stronger than that. I could just like keep going, and I'm a woman. I'm just gonna like keep being more successful, right? Keep just going and keep going, and next thing you know, that turns into high blood pressure, and see, if you actually took a moment to
Mm.
actually just notice the emotion,
Mm.
right? Then you could actually honor that emotion, right? Because when we honor the emotion, it doesn't really stay very long. We
So
can actually
honoring the
navigate
emotion
it.
means you're saying, you know what, I'm scared right now.
Yeah.
And actually, well, and from a brain perspective, what I know is that the part of your brain releases soothing neurotransmitters to the activated part of your brain when you name it. you
Yes.
actually tame it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly that. Because now that I've named it, right, I literally can navigate it. I could give myself permission to be human. I could talk to
Mhm.
myself like I'm a friend. Like we talk to our friends, we're so nice to our friends, and then we talk to ourselves like an enemy, right? Talk to yourself, oh, that's what happened? Oh my God. Yeah, 100% normal that you're feeling that way. If that happened to me, I'd be feeling that way too.
Yeah. That is, I'm writing this down. We talk to ourselves like they're an enemy.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And the issue with telling ourselves that we don't like the way this feels and that we should be better than that and stronger than that is that we keep those emotions in the body, right? And because we don't like the way that elevated heart rate feels, we don't like, that stress headache or when our stomach feels really off. We just want to numb that out. We feel like there's more pain in honoring the emotion, and we
Yeah.
instead push it down, right? We push it down.
We're actually scared to feel them. And I think
We're
that,
scared to feel them. Yeah,
but because we feel that if we just let them in a little bit, they're going to take us over and ruin us. And I will cry
100%.
for the rest of my life. But actually, if you ever just let yourself cry, you'll stop.
Roar it out. Let yourself scream. Go start boxing. Like there's so many different things that you can do to physically release those emotions. And the issue is that we all keep them chronically in the body. So when you chronically ignore fear, right, it turns into anxiety in your brain. You chronically ignore sadness, it's going to turn into depression. You chronically ignore the emotion from a physical standpoint, what you're doing is you're actually building up cortisol in your body, because every time you feel stress, the brain thinks, oh my God, there's an attack happening.
Right.
Right, the brain actually believes it. The brain has no idea that it's a mind-made war and that there isn't a gazelle in the bush about to attack you. So the brain is gonna like get you ready for fighting or flying, and it's gonna elevate your heart rate.
Yeah.
It's gonna constrict your bronchi, so you're like, like
Yeah.
that happens. It's gonna take the moisture from your eyes. We get stress headaches. It takes the moisture from your mouth. It shuts off your digestion. You tighten your
Right.
hips, you tighten your knees. We hold that in our hips and our knees. We're number one for hip and knee replacement for this reason. And we just get ready. We are getting ready to fight that fight. We never fight it. And
Okay. Okay. So what you're
you're like, oh my
saying
God,
is, yeah, oh
this
my
is
gosh.
like, so everyone does this.
Yeah. So our brains are wired for survival first
Yes.
and foremost.
First
Right.
and
That's really
foremost.
what you're talking about. And
Yes.
so when we don't take a minute to say, okay, I am scared right now. I am really scared right now. And I think I need to cry. And I can allow myself without judgment, without criticism, to cry and cry it out and feel those feelings. Okay. So
Yes.
if
Permission to
I
be
don't
human.
do that, pardon?
Yes. Permission to be human.
Permission to be human, right? And I think we might need to define what it is to be human, because I feel like we've
Right.
all forgotten what it is to be human. But
Yes.
what you're saying
Yes.
is that unless we acknowledge what is happening to like what we're feeling, the emotions will stay in the body in
Yes.
and that means we are locking our body up.
Yeah, we essentially are. It's a very good way of putting it. And you're storing that energy in your body in the form of cortisol. Right. So you'll like now you recognize the short-term effects of cortisol when I just said it. The stress headache, headache, your eyes get dry, right? Your
And
mouth
can
gets
you
dry.
define cortisol just for those listening that don't know what that is?
Yes, yes, it was a stress chemical, stress hormone, cortisol. And it's there, as you said, simply for survival purposes, because back in the day, when we felt any threat, that was always connected to, oh my God, we might get pounced on by an animal. We're living in caves. We have to kill for our food. So we needed to pay very close attention to what those threats are, right? But today, those threats are still coming into our brain, and our brain doesn't have the ability to discern between whether or not that's a threat about a presentation next Tuesday, or
Exactly.
that's a threat about, like living in a cave and not having a door. Like the brain doesn't
Right.
have the ability. It's still going to get you ready to fight or flight, like every time. And in fact, what it's doing is it's a shutting down of the system, because what you're doing is you're messaging that it's really protection mode time, right? So the brain is saying, we got to take from every single part of your high optimal body functioning, and we're going to put all that towards fighting this fight that we never fight. So it's even going to lower your immunity, because you think your brain cares about a cold that you might be getting if there's a gazelle in the bush. It doesn't care about that. It's taking away all of your greatness, and it's putting it towards this. And I mean, this is important to know. We're still in a pandemic, that cortisol is so good at lowering immunity that if you're going to be getting an organ transplant, your surgeon is going to actually inject it into the area where the organ is going into in the body, to make sure the body doesn't even reject it. Like, that's how good cortisol is at lowering immunity.
Wow. And so,
You're like, oh my god.
what I hear is that, okay, here we are, we have a really outdated survival system that is innate in
Right.
all of us, outdated for today's day and age,
Yes.
where we do not have, animal predators for the most part, coming out ready to kill us for food for them.
Right.
And
Right.
our brain can't differentiate whether it is a presentation, like you said, or an
Right.
actual animal coming to eat me. And so we never actually have that fight.
Right.
We are just continuing to add stress on top of stress on top of stress.
Right.
And so
Right.
is it as simple as starting by saying, okay, look, you know what? That's just my brain. That's just what my brain does, and I don't need to believe it. Right? Can you sort of start there? Or
Yes.
what do
Yes.
you, I've started doing that myself. I've noticed I had a day a couple of weeks ago where I was feeling sorry for myself for whatever reason. I don't even remember. And I remember, like, I remember being really intentional, like, I'm going to let myself feel these feelings. I'm going to feel all of this. I'm not going to numb. I'm not going to do anything. And then I noticed stories starting to come. Oh, well, of blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, don't you dare come. Like, I'm having this like internal brain conflict. And then another one comes in and I'm like, no, 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 no. Right. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that, because I think you
That is
can.
awesome. That is awesome that you got to that place, because you're telling me that you're the watcher of your thoughts.
Yes.
When
Yeah.
you become the watcher of your thoughts, now you're empowered to choose the thoughts that serve you,
Yeah.
instead of having to serve every single thought that comes up.
Mm,
Right. And this is like exactly what you just said, is like the number one thing to do, is talk back to your brain. Right.
mm. But what if
Because
you
your
think your thought
brain,
is true? What if I think, my kid is lazy and is going to fail in life because he or she isn't getting good grades, has a really bad boyfriend, and is probably going to drop out of school? What about
okay,
that?
so you have the evidence, right? So the thought is that your child is not going to do well in school, is not going to do well in life, because of the evidence. And what's the evidence that you just said, if you could repeat it?
Bad boyfriend, doesn't do well in school, grades are bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Lazy, maybe. Yeah.
Right.
Throw in whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So is that something that you right now are working on when that thought is coming up? Like, what are you doing when that thought is coming up? Where are you? Are you with your kid? Are you at work? Like, where are you? Are you food shopping?
uh it is always on my mind. Let's say, like, this is a total hypothetical. It's
Okay.
always on my mind. I'm thinking about it at work, I'm thinking about it when I'm grocery shopping, and I'm thinking about it when I'm with them.
Right. And how does it make you feel?
Would probably make me feel disappointed, scared, resentful, because I've put so much work into my kid and all of my,
Yeah.
all that stuff, that story, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And what's it doing to your body? Like, how is it like making you feel uncomfortable in some way?
Yeah,
Do
I
you
would say it would be like restrictive in my chest. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so what's happening is from the fear and the worry, the brain takes that and is making the stress hormone cortisol, and you can feel that happening every time the thought pattern comes up, no matter where you are in your life, right? So the question is whether or not you actually need to think about it all the time.
Mm, okay.
Right? Because when we know that, we actually can containerize our fears, then we can get back to the present moment, right? And what's important about getting back to the present moment is that only in the present moment can we actually be able to have clarity of mind where we can also make the best decisions and be able to execute from a place of wellness. It's the only place that we can experience
Mhm.
elevated emotion. And elevated emotion, like joy, love,
Mhm.
connection, creativity, are the things that we need to thrive during life, right? So when we want to thrive during life, those are the tools that we're going to use in order to actually transform our energy that really shifts our family, right?
Mm.
Without even having to like sit down and talk to your child. If you're already living in a place where your energy is shifted into that of gratitude, hope, excitement, and love, then you're already at a place where you're excited to be able to problem solve what may or may not be working, which isn't something that you need to be doing all the time because it's taking you away from you living in your highest
Mm.
potential.
Right. So you're so busy living in the future that you absolutely don't know for sure if it will come to pass. I mean, let's be honest, the
That's right.
pandemic, if anything, has taught us that nothing in the future, we have no idea what's happening or coming for us next, right?
That's just it.
Right.
That's just it.
So we're so busy living in the future, in a future that is not certain, right? And we're not actually living in this present moment when we could
That's
be connecting with our daughter and
exactly.
actually finding out what's going on with her,
That's
right?
exactly it.
Okay.
That's exactly it. And sometimes it's as simple as forgetting about all the things that we think our children need to be and leaning into what it is that we love about them and how we can actually feel their energy as a family unit and why we actually, want to hang. What do we have in common? What do we do that's fun? Let's cultivate it from a place of joy because when we're not actually talking about the issues all the time and we just cultivate relationships from that place of joy and fun and laughter, which is why we're here, they're an open book. The problems come up.
Mhm.
Hey mom, I just wanted to let yesterday I think we got into an argument, my boyfriend and I kind of didn't really want to talk about it, but you know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
now what you're doing is you're laying the groundwork for, I'm not really just hanging with you just because I'm solving a problem that's really running around my mind all the time. I'm hanging with you because I'm hanging with you.
Mm.
I'm
And
hanging
I
with
think we
you
have to
back.
acknowledge those thoughts are going to keep coming, but you
Yes.
don't have to attach to them, right? You
Exactly.
don't need them.
100%.
Yes.
So what you said before was great. You'll see those thoughts coming up, right? And it is an old way of being. It's an old way of using our brain, right? So
Mm.
the brain from, back in the day evolutionarily is hardwired to pay very close attention to threat, right? We needed that to survive, right? We needed that in order to get our food. We needed that to have a place to live that was safe. But now we have safe living quarters. Like I've got a door over here. I could order my food from my
Yeah.
phone, right? But what we're still doing is we're using our brain in a very old, outdated way in a world that is evolving. So we no
Mhm.
longer need to pay very close attention to all these threats. So the brain, it thinks it's helping you, right? When
Of
it keeps
course.
bringing that stuff up and oh, well, you think that's fine. What about this thing? So it's going to do that on an ongoing basis because it's born that way. That's the bias of the brain. We are born with a negatively biased brain until you do what you said. You continuously talk back to the brain. And I love to say, okay, brain, thank you for bringing that up again. I got you. I'm in the driver's seat here. Totally will
Mm.
problem solve this. And you can do this. You can pick a date and time to problem solve it Monday afternoon. Give myself 30 minutes to write down all the different things that I'm worried about with my daughter. I'm worried about
Yeah.
this, and this. I promise you, you give yourself 30 minutes to write down all your worries about your daughter, you're only going to spend 2 minutes of it, which is great. But the point is if that's not for like another 4 days, you literally just get right back to the present moment every time. Because the
Mm.
more you do that, the more the brain starts to notice, oh, she doesn't really entertain these thoughts. I
Mm.
think I'm gonna stop bringing them up, right? And the more you live in the present moment, the more you
Mm.
lean into gratitude, love, joy, creativity, choosing the thoughts that serve you, looking at the beauty of life. The
Yeah.
brain pays attention. It says, wow, she likes doing that. Let me rewire myself to make it much easier for her to do that. So those negative thoughts that used to come up, those become unnatural to entertain because now you're shifting the bias of the brain from negative to positive, which is totally doable using neuroplasticity.
Well, I didn't know you could actually have a positivity bias instead of
Yes,
a
you
negativity.
can. You
Okay,
can do
that's so cool. I
that.
mean, that's why we've called this
That's
episode
why we're
Enliven.
talking.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I didn't actually know that before we
Yeah,
started
yeah, it's
recording,
true.
so that's great. And
It's so
there's
true.
a couple things I want to say that just to me really solidify the message. Right, one is that if you worry and it never happens, you've lived through it for no reason.
Thank
If
you.
you worry and it does happen,
Yeah.
you live through it twice.
Right.
Why?
Yes. Love
Why?
that you said it
Right?
like that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And
Yes.
I
Yes.
think the to add on to what you said about when you are in this present moment, that's when you can see joy and all this stuff because you actually are living in otherwise you can't see because you're so busy in the past and in the future. How could you possibly notice how beautiful the sky looks today?
You just can't.
Or you know what, that actually, those trees are beautiful even though they've lost all their leaves, whatever
You
whatever
can
it is.
see, yes, you can see the
Yeah,
same tree every day change.
yeah,
And it is just it is as I say that I get chills everywhere. And I started, this whole conversation with you about the future past,
yeah.
anxiety, depression, anxiety. So when I, heard that in the first week of the class, I was like, oh my God, did I just miss my whole life? I just missed my
Yeah,
whole
now
life.
don't start beating yourself up about it though. Right.
Right. Well, and then that's the thing, because at that point you're like, okay, that all happened for a reason. That all happened for growth, right? And that's the beauty of life, is that, things inevitably are never going to work out. And when we lean into, where it is that we could actually learn from that, and we cultivate curiosity, we start to see, wow, those failures are there specifically for my growth, and I can either pull
Yes.
myself down in judgment and never learn the lesson, or I could spiral up today and get even, more and better opportunities for
Ooh,
growth.
spiral up. Oh, I like that. I wanted to ask you, in terms of the body storing stuff, the act of saying, okay, I'm going to problem solve this today. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write all the things that I'm worried about my daughter, this daughter that I don't have, that is fictitious.
Okay.
Uh, does that release it from your body?
Yes, yes,
Okay. So
absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely.
how does that work? Is it the same thing that we talked about before, where it's, the left side of your brain is releasing those soothing neurotransmitters? Is that really the same act?
Yes, yes. So you can feel that heavy emotion, right, in
Mhm.
the body. Now that I said it, you kind of just align with those short-term effects of cortisol as being your body's way of telling you, you're feeling heavy emotion. You're gonna feel it in your head, maybe your chest, your belly, right?
Mhm.
When we take that moment, right, and we actually notice, name, and navigate those emotions, we can
Mhm.
feel them dissipate when they actually see the light of day. We honor
Yeah.
them, we soothe ourselves, and we start to see this is here for growth, right? When that happens, you can actually allow yourself to choose how you want to feel instead. That's
Mhm.
personal mastery, right?
Mhm.
You choosing an elevated emotion, even though nothing on the outside has occurred to make that happen. Why? Because just like heavy emotion communicates to us in the body, through the body, we can also choose elevated emotion if we just know what it feels like.
Right.
So, and that's the teaching, right? And that's where relaxation techniques come in, because if you were able to just catch immediately the very moment you started to feel that elevated heart rate, you
Mhm.
didn't really give that emotion a lot of time to settle into your issues, into your tissues. And there's a
Mhm.
saying, the issues are carried in the
Oh, I
tissues.
believe that.
Yeah. Right. And that's the thing, because long term, when we ignore the cortisol, right, and that's the buildup of the inflammation, we actually have cardiovascular, diabetes, we get our cancers this way, autoimmunes, our genes express, we have accelerated aging. Like, this is the cause of all of our chronic illnesses. Now, if
Mhm.
you notice it immediately, right, and you honor that emotion, you might still feel dialed up physically.
Mhm.
So at that time, before you could even rationally go anywhere, right, and really figure out, well, maybe next Tuesday I'll pick a time to date and, like, problem solve it,
Yeah.
you can just simply honor the emotion and then send a message of calm up to the mind, where you can then access the rational mind to be able to problem solve. Now, how do you send a message of calm up to the mind, right? To get more rational, because you want to get to that neutral state, right? When you're all amped up and you're feeling anger, you can't just go right to being rational, right? Sure, you could notice the emotion, you can honor it, you could soothe yourself, right? But you're still probably amped up, right? So for you to go like right to being rational, that's like driving a car that like is a stick shift that goes from reverse to drive. You can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You must go to the neutral place first. So to do that, you want to be able to send a message of calm to the mind, and you do that using the body. So lots of different techniques we said before, like maybe punching something or running, yoga is very good for that. Breathing exercises are wonderful, but one of my favorite things is to actually use the heart to send a message of calm to the brain.
Okay.
And now I'm going to answer your question because I know you had asked before and I still even answer it. And I can go into why this works. But when we use the body to send a message of calm back up to the brain, and we are empowered to now instead choose the elevated emotion that we want to feel, the brain takes that as, okay, sounds like life's worth living. Sounds like you love yourself, you're maybe in a place of self-healing. And this can be done through the breathing, through running, through meditation, through the heart-brain coherence meditation I was talking about. There's many different ways to do this, but the point is the brain will say, okay, if you're telling me life is worth living, I'm going to help you out. I'm going to, instead turning on, the stress hormone cortisol, I'm going to turn on the bliss chemicals. I'm going to turn on oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin. Yeah, all the
The
things
bliss
that we want.
chemicals.
Yes. And because you can't, if you think about it, you can't have both, right? You
Mm.
can't be turning on the stress hormone and the bliss chemicals at the same time. You just can't. It's an either or situation. So when you have those bliss chemicals coursing through your body, right, which obviously feel amazing, other
Mhm.
things happen, like we get rid of the inflammation that's in the body, right? We get
Mhm.
protected from cancer, from autoimmunes, our genes don't express. We actually reverse age, we boost our immunity. There's lots of amazing things that happen just by accessing the internal pharmacy that lives in our body using
Mhm.
elevated emotion. And this is kind of the biggest message to teach, literally everyone, but specifically our children, is that
Yes.
the world is crazy.
Yeah.
There'll be crazy things happening all the time. We can't control that. We never will. But what we can certainly control is how we feel about it.
Yeah.
That's what we have control over. We have human mastery when we can actually choose elevated emotion regardless of what's happening on the outside. Because you piss me off, something really bad happens, someone cuts me off when I'm driving. Self-worth is saying, I have worked, to get into a state of elevated emotion, and I am not going to let that person that just cut me off age me or make my genes express or lower my
Ooh, I
immunity.
like
And
that.
yeah, and make me feel unclear. Because if I'm getting into the cortisol place, now I'm ruminating again. And if I'm ruminating again, that means I don't have that heightened sense of clarity to problem solve. I can't notice the present moment.
Okay, so there's something that I keep thinking about as you're talking. And what I want to know is what is the difference between accepting it, saying, okay, I'm not going to let that person do that to me, or what I
Yes.
like, I'm sorry, you know what I mean. I'm not
Yes,
going to
cut
let
me
that
off while I'm
person,
driving or something. Yeah.
yeah. Um, and also, how do you say it? Like, ignoring it, or
Hmm.
but in not a good way, right? Like all of a sudden now you are yeah, like you're avoiding it so that you don't
Hmm.
feel the bad thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean? So like
Okay. Like
I think I
glazing
did that
over it
for,
kind of thing?
pardon?
Like glazing over it? Is that what you mean?
Maybe glazing over it. Like I think there was a time for me when I started this journey into a more peaceful parenting practice where I would get so upset over my son's behavior,
Mm.
and then it was almost like I stopped caring about it. But I
Yeah.
don't know that that was healthy. Like I wasn't, there was a time when I did that. And I think that I sort of just like turned a blind eye to it and it was yeah, it was
Like
like
a
a coping
coping.
mechanism, almost
Yeah.
like I was denying it or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm really
No, you
trying to
are.
articulate
We
it.
we do that. That's an overwhelm, and we become apathetic.
Yeah, there you
And we're
go.
and we're
Apathetic. There, that's it. Yeah.
like, but yeah, or I can only take so much. I'm gonna go have some wine, and that's it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good to create distance, right? Which is fine. But if you feel as though you've taken that emotion and you've pushed it down so far because there has been a numbing that's been associated to it, and you can't even feel it anymore, right? What's happening is you can always ask yourself, is that driving me closer to my goals, or keeping me further away from them?
Hmm. I
You
think
know,
that's a real practice because it's just so hard to know how to do that, right?
yes,
Which I know
yes,
is why we're talking, right? That's where you
yes,
come in.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, it is, and the bar for us is so high.
Mm.
Like we want so much for every single thing that we juggle to stay up in the air all at the same time. And we can't
Mm.
physically, like it's from a physics perspective impossible. And
Yeah.
you can't give 100% to 100% of the things.
Yeah.
You just can't,
You just can't.
and but that doesn't mean that you're not still worthy of self-love, and self-worth, and giving yourself that permission to be human, and saying, you know what, I can't give this the attention that it needs right now. I'm just going to be like 100% honest with you. And if you have a good partner, you can have that conversation, and say, and I like, again, Brene Brown will say to her partner, right now from a 1 to 10, I've got like a 3 worth of energy. And the
Mhm.
partner might be like, okay, I'm actually at an 8. So like, why don't you go out with your girlfriend and I'll do dinner? And give ourselves that reset time, because the
Mm.
worst thing is carrying around the guilt that, did I for a set number of years feel too apathetic, where we didn't drive towards the goals of what we know our child could truly reach.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's all a part of the evolution, right? I mean, that
Yes.
was what I needed to do to get to the place where I am today. And so here's another question for you. What about trauma? What about
Mm,
real traumatic experiences? This sounds all
mm,
wonderful, but what
mhm.
about that?
Yeah, so trauma in the sense of, if you're a parent and you had it when you were a child, or trauma,
I kind of
any
mean
trauma.
any kind of trauma. Yeah.
Any
I mean,
trauma.
look, well, and the reason why I thought that is because I think that well, no, I don't think I know. There were times where I was really traumatized in the
Mm,
parenting that I was doing,
mm,
traumatized by how hard it was, how bad I felt about myself. But I don't just, because it's not about me. I just mean in general, like trauma, how do you square that away
right,
with
right,
positive psychology, whether it was being sexually abused or
right,
assaulted or
right.
whatever, you have a high ACE score, for
Yeah,
example, right?
yeah. And there's so much trauma. And right now you're bringing it home for me, because I grew up, unfortunately, with trauma, and
Mhm.
my brother being bipolar schizophrenic, undiagnosed,
Oh, wow.
um, until he like went to college. So it was a lot of me seeing and hearing things a lot of the time that I just wanted to block out. And being a kid, not having any money or anything, not having a place to go, I would kind of
Mhm.
just like hide in my room, and I would try to disappear into myself
Mhm.
to shield myself from hearing and seeing
Yeah.
certain things. And that is really the fascinating piece about trauma, because that's creating a protective shell around yourself, right? Which really protected my inner child, right? I didn't
Mhm.
know at the time that that was creating it, like kind of like a templatization of like me going into depression whenever I would see or hear something that I couldn't deal with. And that's what came out later, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the time, that self-protection mechanism really served me,
Yeah.
right? And people will have that shell that they wear, which we'll also call armor, for
Mhm.
a number of years. And then at some point, what happens is they start to see that that armor, usually made out of perfection, to be honest. We create this armor, this shell, like, okay, so inner child, you go inside real quick, and we're gonna create like this different person on the outside. And I
Yeah.
told myself, you know, my brother's having issues, my parents can't handle it. I'm gonna be the perfect child so that I don't like further burden anybody.
Yes.
And I showed up as perfect all the time, right? And then
Mm.
at some point, I realized that that shell, that armor that I had built, it served me, but up until a certain point, because kind of like in the mid to late 30 time frame, I think we all start to notice that that shell is now keeping you from living your truth, from sharing and giving love, from leaning into connection, from expanding your talents. From, you actually need to pull that inner child out, right?
Mm.
So the question is, are we able to notice the moments in our life where something happens that's really challenging, where we go into that armor and we put it on and it keeps us from living our truth? Because
Mm.
if we see that, then where we armor up, and we do this so very often, especially in the workplace, we'll do it in school. If we see that, right, then we can actually imagine what it might be like if we showed up as our truth, as ourself, if we showed
Mm.
up without the armor on. And then that's where the growth becomes beauty in the trauma, because
Mm.
you start to see, wow, that all happened so I could learn how to show up as my best, most authentic self.
Mm.
And there's growth and there's resiliency around that. When you're able to do that and circumvent that, you
Mm.
can share that message with everyone, and you can look back at your childhood and you can be like, wow, you know what? I am so lucky that I got to be able to live through all of that and receive something that so few people have, which is called perspective.
Mm. So, okay, so what I heard you say is that you the trauma happens, you protect yourself and you put on this armor.
Yes,
And at
correct.
some point, the armor is costing you in some
That,
part of your life, whether it's connection, relationship,
mm,
it's probably just it's connection, right?
yeah,
And
achievement at work is a big one, because we'll be afraid that, we're gonna mess up, and let me just stay small and stay safe and not throw out, the
yes,
courageous ideas. And we go in armored. We're just used to being armored then.
yes. And so that is your, so at some point, the cost is so great. And that
Mhm.
is your call,
Yes.
your invitation to say, okay, I need to look at this now. I need to nurture this inner child that I have
Yes.
and bring her or him into the light and
Yes.
say, okay, this is what I lived through. Look at what I was able to do to protect myself. And in order for me to live my best life, I need to
I need to take it off.
I need to take it
I need to take it
off.
off. And it's
Oh,
it's
that's
hard.
scary.
Yeah, it's hard to do that, because now we're asking ourselves to be vulnerable, right? And I'm gonna go again to Brene Brown, because she will say, without vulnerability, we don't have courage. Courage and vulnerability interchangeable. You know,
100%.
so you start to see how we've all kind of in some way become armored. I mean, every person has had something that they carry with them that has caused them to go retracting into a shell and not
Yeah.
live their truth.
Yeah.
And so, you get to that point, and you start to see that, trauma and the shell is something that you can actually appreciate, and you can see,
Mm.
wow, it protected me then. That was so good for me then, but now I'm actually ready for more.
Hmm. Well, and I think
I'm ready to be.
sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. What I was going to say is that I
No,
think
that's
it brings
okay.
us back to where we started, which is like the story I'm telling myself is, right?
Yes,
And I think that what
absolutely.
happens is I've always found that, and I say this all the time, this is my idea, that children are resilient, adults are not, um, and they can be, but not unless they learn how. And by
Right.
that, what I
Right.
really mean is that it's, it's also not until we have children that they inadvertently, through just being kids,
Yeah.
just being kids, having their own needs and wants, don't have a fully grown brain, are egocentric, like all the things that they are, that is just the way they are. They trigger us. They bring back the feelings of helplessness, of
Yes.
not being heard, all of that stuff. And then we rage at them because now we've got the
Yes.
power, but we're yelling at
Yes.
the wrong person, our sweet little babies.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes. You might be yelling at your parent. You might
I
be
know
yelling at,
I was
yeah.
yelling at
Yes.
my dad because he never
Yes.
listened to me,
Right.
and
Yes.
my kids weren't listening, and so I yelled at them because all I wanted is to be heard. Like now I
Right.
know that about myself,
Right.
right?
And you have the awareness, and so we can always tell ourselves, we're human, and we're perfectly imperfect. So like we're just trying to figure it out. But when you have the awareness, that's where you see the true growth starts to happen. And you know, the most important thing in removing the armor is still loving every version of yourself that you were when you had it
Mm,
on. And that was a big one for me because I hated myself literally up until 40 because there were so many different things and people that I became, things that I did, that I regretted and wish I hadn't done, and ways that I spoke to my
mm,
children that I wish I hadn't of, and so that I wasn't there enough. There's so many different things that happen in college, like there's so many different things, and you can go back to that child, and
mm,
you can say, I love you. We're gonna fully incarnate here. It is
mm,
totally safe to do that. I got you now. You don't
mm,
have to be afraid about what people are gonna think about you. And I don't just love you as the child, right? I actually love every single version that we had to become in order to survive because we needed to be that then, right?
yeah,
And then you get to a really special place, not just with every version of yourself that you ever were, but then you get to a really special place and you start to realize, God damn, what were my parents even going through when they were raising me? Because
totally.
we're all doing our best, like this is us
Yeah.
we're doing our best. And you start to say, I think they were really doing their best. Like that was actually
Yeah.
their best. And God only knows, what it is that they went through from a trauma perspective that made them
Mhm,
show up the way that they did. And now you're in a place of compassion. And when you got compassion, you got
mhm.
forgiveness and love on an ongoing basis. And you stop going naturally to that default of, well, I'm gonna yell at my kid because my dad never listened to me. Like that ends. That
Mhm.
ends because we transition and transform into a place of unlimited love because love is unlimited.
Oh, it's really beautiful. And the good news is that now that you're living in this positive place, and you have you're tilted towards positivity. You also said you are reversing aging. So the fact that the first
Yes,
40 years of your life,
yes.
right? So no big deal.
Keep going. I can keep start over all over again. I tell it to my kids. I'm like, I can keep messing up and having multiple careers because I'm gonna just live forever. And they're like, oh, you're crazy, mommy. I'm like, no,
That's right.
I am.
No, I am going to live forever,
I really
100%.
am.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love it. That's so great. That's so great. Okay, so I want to just transition a little bit to talking about what you have for everybody. And
Yes.
uh, yeah, talk about what it is. It's called self havening. I misread it and said self halving. I didn't know what it was, but anyway,
You
self
can have it.
havening.
Woohoo!
Yeah, what's that about? Does that mean I get to meditate and also work? Does that no?
Yeah,
Okay,
almost.
what is
Almost.
self havening? Yeah.
Almost. So this is, I know I had said before, it's really important to start to become kind of fluent in the languaging of the body so that you can listen when it's being a messenger for that heavy emotion, right? So maybe that happens in the chest or the head, the belly. So, you'll want to honor that feeling, of course, and create calm. So this creates calm by down regulating your nervous system in less than a
Mm,
minute. So you're going to be able to see that it is so, so simple to do, and you literally just use your fingers, and you could show your kids, and you could actually, I'm doing it right now while I'm speaking. So there's a couple different moves that you could choose, but this one right here, I'm just doing it with my hands. And when you do this, you become so incredibly calm that it's
mm.
actually impossible to feel stress. And then you're able to choose the emotion that you want to feel instead, which is human mastery that we talked about before. Yeah. So yeah, there's quite a few of them.
Wow.
You'll see. So
Okay.
news reporters do this under their desk, like while they're it
No.
keeps them calm. Yeah, this stimulates delta waves, which is the stage 3 sleep delta waves. They're found in stage 3, and it's the most relaxed, safest, calmest that we could ever feel. And the threat detection of the amygdala, it literally goes away.
That is incredible. Every parent, every child needs to do this. This is the calming soother that you need when you are activated.
There's a few different moves. There are some that are even stronger. Here's
okay.
Like another one.
Yeah. Listen, we're doing them as we talk. Alana is demonstrating them, but you have to be on YouTube to actually see us do that. Yes. But the great thing is that she has a video in the parent toolbox for you to do this. Please go. The parent toolbox is totally free. You just need to join because that's just the way it's set up on this on the website that I use. But it's totally free to join. And why wouldn't you when you can get experts like Alana showing you things to change your life? Please do it. Please do it. And enjoy more calm and joy. Our default setting, period, end of story, is joy, not fear, not the fear that we all live in. So let's start enjoying life and tilting our brains to the positive, not the negative. Any last words that you have for us, Alana?
I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. And, I love the fact that potentially children could hear this, because for them to have these tools as they live their life and know this is all a choice is really one of the most empowering things that I've ever been able to learn.
Yeah, I kind of want you to move into my house.
That's
if you don't mind.
I don't think anyone will care. I'm just going to tell my dad listen to me. Look at that. Oh, my husband.
And bring your doodle dog as well.
Totally bring my dog. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll leave that. He's right over there sleeping.
Yes. This has been so much fun, but also so insightful. I gotta say, the more I learn about the brain, the more you're able to just say, oh, it's just my brain. It's not me. And I love how Eckhart Tolle says it in A New Earth. He just says the mind is Maya. The mind is crazy, right? And so we don't need to believe all this stuff. And there's things that we can do. There is a mind-body connection. We got to pay attention to that. We've got to make note of the stories we're telling ourselves, right? We've got to understand, like what you said, that living in the future is anxiety, living in the past is depression. We need to be in this moment and not at war with what is, accepting of what is, so we can grasp the joy, the beauty, the excitement in life, right?
Yes,
the gratitude. Yes.
The present is temporary.
The present is temporary. Yes. I always think of it like a film strip, because you only can do one image on the light per frame. That's it. One frame in the light, right? Yes. And then it's gone. That's it. Then it's the past or it's the future. Yeah.
It's exactly that. That is our life. That is the only thing we can ever experience. Yet we sacrifice so many of those temporary present moments for something we can never experience, like the future or the past.
Oh, yeah, we can never experience that. Oh my goodness.
Never experience.
Oh gosh. I'm gonna go reevaluate my entire life now.
Perfect. That's what I said when I first heard this. I was like, wait, what?
Oh, Alana, this is so great. Alana Ezderman, where can people find you? Of course, your information is on the show notes, but still, where can people find you?
Reclaim Brain. So www.reclaimbrain.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
You're my new best friend. And I'm going to give you my address so you can move in.
Oh, perfect. Good. I'll be there.
Love it. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care now. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McManne, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I'd be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and connection.